and welcome to Vantage Point. I'm Marcia Boyles, and as always, I'd like to introduce my co-host and co-producer, Kathleen Taylor. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi.
Kathleen, we have an interesting show, I think, today, and before we talk about the topic, I'd like to introduce our guests this morning. We have two of our outstanding residents. I'd like to start with Sandy Grundeman. Sandy, welcome.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
And Sandy has been here for 4 years, and that is pertinent in ways that we'll describe shortly. Carolyn Nagler, welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you.
And Carolyn, you've been here 8 years.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Now, this morning, we are going to be talking about our focus group results. And let me just give you a little bit of background about the focus groups. Both of you were in our focus groups. This is the 3rd year that we've had them, and we purposely kept them quite small. I think they ranged in size this year from 8 to, I think 16 was the largest. So we had lots of time and opportunity for people to discuss the issues. The purpose of our focus groups, which again, this is our 3rd year holding these, is to identify topics for our 2 programs, Vantage Point, this program, and our That's Life program, and also community forums and workshops, which we have sponsored. Kathleen, let me turn it over to you to talk about what the topic was, how we presented this in terms of the question we asked, and begin the results.
Okay, absolutely. So, hi, welcome. What we were looking for with our focus groups was just topics that kind of typified the residents' experiences on campus. What was important to our residents, and as we put it, what gets you up in the morning or keeps you awake at night. So topics that really kind of, have an impact on your day-to-day life. And so our focus groups, this is the third year that we've done them.
And we held 3. I think I didn't say that.
3 focus groups this year. And they were all, as they have always been, really informative. The residents that participated were always so perceptive and really gave us some good information. And I think the really interesting part about this year's focus groups that Marcia was very intentional about was bringing in people that had been in the community for varying periods of time.
Good point. I think the newest person had been here 4 months, and we had several people who were actually came in here when it was built.
Yeah. So though we always have been able to kind of pull out common themes from the focus groups, I think this year we really got that idea of the range of experience that people have, from coming into the community to kind of getting integrated into the community to being someone who's been here for a period of time and maybe had more of a historical perspective. So it was so much great information. And just to start talking about it today, we should just start at the beginning, which is when people move into Green Spring and what that's like. And I know both of you had some feelings about that as well. So, Carolyn, would you like to start?
Well, I moved in sort of in an unusual way because I started paying for my apartment April 1st, and I didn't actually move in until June 9th. And in between, I was commuting back and forth between my house, where I was continuing the downsizing, and then I moved in the 9th of June. So it was a little bit different.
Yeah, actually, I think it's not so different, because I think that in the other focus groups, too, we heard about people that sort of kept one foot in the outside community and one foot in Green Spring, and then how that was sort of challenging their ability to maybe feel like they were part of Green Spring, and how that worked. It was like, am I still on the outside but just sleeping here at Green Spring, or am I actually part of the Green Spring community at this point?
And Sandy is newer.
Yeah. I think you had some thoughts about that, I remember.
Yeah, we were very different. We, from the time we made the decision to move in here until we actually took keys and moved in was 2 months. So it was really
Wow.
fast, and yeah, so it was a very different experience.
What were your feelings when you moved in? How did you feel? I mean, did you feel immediately
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. Well, okay, that's a common feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Sandy, now you've been here 4 years. How long? You talked, I recall, in the focus group about feeling a sense of grieving.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think for some of us, there is a process of grieving when you leave the life you had before and you come here. You might grieve your home. You might grieve your leaving if you're a gardener, you know, the gardening. A home that most of us have lived in for decades, with all the memories that are there. And not only the past memories, but the opportunity to make future memories. You give that up in that home. Not that you can't make future memories here, but they're different. And so there is that. It's a process that can take a year, 2 years. I mean, it can take time to adjust to living here and the whole change in lifestyle.
Yeah, I think we heard that from a lot of people, that it was an adjustment that would happen gradually, and depending on, I mean, right now we have residents that are still working, but there are also people that their whole social life is still outside the community. So those are choices that people make, for
Right.
sure.
Some folks even went so far as to say they felt like they didn't belong
Right.
here for the first year or two.
Right.
And I remember having some sense of that as well, and certainly grieving for the house. I remember feeling grief for them, and yard, as you're saying. One of the newcomers in our memoir class shows pictures of her garden, because that was the thing that made, on her phone, she has a lot of pictures of her garden because that's what she misses.
Yeah.
A relative newcomer too.
Yeah. I know there was also that identifying with Green Spring. I think that people were saying that I don't identify with the people that are here. This makes me feel old.
Yeah.
You know, there's kind of like a little bit of a resistance to thinking about yourself in that way. Though what I think I also heard was that goes away over time. You know, that you start to go, I'm not old here. I'm young, actually. So there's that feeling too.
Yeah. One of the other things I think we heard from folks was that it changed the relationship they had with their kids and grandkids.
Yep.
So there was a change in the family dynamic.
Yep. In fact, I know I had just seen some research lately which was talking about as people get older, the relationships that you have with your peer group become more important than your relationships with your family, which makes total and
Isn't that astonishing?
complete sense, because I think that part of the research was it's that common experience that you shared, because you're all everybody's going through a lot of the same things, whereas your family, some have the different pressures from your family for sure. So more a sense of total acceptance, and that was having those friendships was correlated to a better sense of well-being. So I thought that I agree. That's very interesting.
It really is. That I found that astonishing. One of the other things that some of the folks said was that this was the nicest thing they could do for their kids, was to move to Green Spring. It was a gift to their children.
One of our daughters talks about, she said, I have friends who say, how did you get your parents to do that? How did you, what about giving up driving? And our daughter just says, they made the decision, but her friends are really jealous because
Is that right?
Some of them are struggling with trying to help their parents come to the decision to move into a retirement community with fewer responsibilities, or to give up driving because it's no longer safe. And she's very grateful to us. You know, she said, "Oh, thank you, you know, that you've done these things."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think for some people the benefits aren't clear until they actually get here and have been here for a while and settled in. Initially, I think that people are perceiving it as not necessarily what they want to do, but what they need to do. But I think as people are here longer. But it is, again, that whole transition, it takes time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that startled me only because I had totally forgotten that all of us probably felt that way, there were several people who were quite new, who had been here less than a year, who said things like, "I can't imagine ever having friendships at Green Spring that are as important and close and significant as my friendships outside of, you know, in the community." It just, and I mean, they were just absolutely quite sure that it was never going to happen at Green Spring. You were never going to make friendships that were the same. I'm sure we all felt that way, didn't we, when we moved in? Or at least to some extent. Yeah, Carol, do you remember?
To some extent, perhaps, but I find that you know, in a way, you can make very close friends here because they are experiencing the same things you are, and they understand it better than perhaps some of your friends who are on the outside.
I don't think there's any question about the fact that the friendships we begin to make here are at least as significant.
Important.
And in fact, I suspect from what you are saying, Kathleen, that really they become even more important than they were when we were 40 or 50.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the superficial stuff kind of goes away, you know, because you just end up like being in people's lives in some pretty significant ways because of the life changes that are happening. Yeah. And I know, Caroline, you talked about that too in terms of just how to help your friends when they're going through difficult times
that's,
as well.
I think something that we all need to think about is, you know, we can all use some direction on that, I think. We maybe haven't been faced before with so many friends who are undergoing pretty massive physical problems and medical problems.
Some mental and cognitive
Absolutely.
issues
Yes.
As well. No, I agree, and I think we do realize that our relationships here are become very significant. But apparently, for brand new people, they don't see that as even a possibility. And that kind of struck me as half amusing and half, I had forgotten that we felt some of that when we moved in. Sandy, did you feel that way a bit?
not too much. I mean, I mean, I felt like, you know, there was going to be the opportunity to make friends.
Right.
But I think I was so overwhelmed with the move that the making friends was, you know, kind
secondary.
of, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think the whole idea of kind of living in such close proximity to people, that was something else that came up a lot. Was there's like a plus and a minus to that for sure.
Absolutely.
People were definitely talking about that.
Absolutely, yes. Most of us have lived in big homes, you know, pretty good-sized homes, and many times for many decades, and big yards, and it's just a very different situation where you have somebody in the next apartment, or I'm in a corner apartment, so the person around the corner, I can see into their apartment if we have all of our windows open, and these are different things that one has to get used to.
Yep. Noise and all of that good stuff too. I think it's just being, again, in that cohort situation.
Absolutely,
is really a change for most people.
One comment I've heard several times is, I feel like I'm back in college again.
Yeah.
You know,
That's just what it
in the
does feel like.
dorm, you know, and that kind of thing. And
Sometimes on trash day, there's lots of pizza boxes outside too, so it kind of does look like a dorm. Maybe not so much beer.
I was going to say, what about the beer cans?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that there's like almost that love-hate thing with the people being so here, because On the one hand, people were saying they felt a lot of pressure to socialize, but on the other hand, they were like, but how do you find the people that you really get, who really get you, that you can feel close to? And so it's like there's a lot of people, if you're willing to accept the challenge of getting out there, but then again, how do you find those people that you really are going to have the relationship with?
I think one of the things that always kind of amuses me is I tend to take my dog on Sundays out for a walk, and I'm in a chair, and we sit often in front of the chapel. Now, this is after church is finished. And we sit out in the sun and in front of the chapel. And people come by, and they stop, and they admire Cooper, and we chat. And you know, in 5 or 10 minutes, I will have learned the entire history of a person. And I know it's because I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah,
I try to be a little bit about that. But on the other hand, I feel like, now this is somebody that I've really gotten to know in about 8 minutes. And you know, on the outside, one would never do that. I mean, I wouldn't ask those kinds of questions.
And people probably wouldn't answer you either.
And I'm sure
They would be like, why are you asking these questions?
You idiot. I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So I think that the level of, intimacy is probably not the word, but of friendship and sharing information, I think is entirely different here than it is in the outside world.
I think so. Yes.
You have talked about going to the grocery store and being...
Yeah, I said your attitude changes. I mean, my experience is my attitude changes when I come into Green Spring, and I'm say hello to everybody. I think we all mostly do that. That's sort of like one of our unwritten rules is everybody says good morning or good afternoon. But if you carry that out into the rest of Northern Virginia, you can get some really strange looks like, what is wrong with that woman, Because in Northern Virginia, there's a lot of hustle and bustle and people like, not paying attention to anything but their cell phones. So it is a different way of life, and I think that even people that kind of maybe are a little resistant to it at the beginning, I think it kind of wears you down after a while, and you do start to go, oh, this is nice that we say hello to each other in the morning.
Yes, it absolutely is. It certainly. Eloise Stinger, who was in our focus group, made a comment, and she said the best part about Green Spring is the community and the closeness. The worst part about Green Spring is the community and the closeness.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I thought it was too.
You give up some of your privacy, and it's a trade-off, and how much really is up to you, though. I mean, I think within the confines of that, you can control how much of your privacy you give up, and
to a large degree, you can. Yeah.
You can, choose to do carry out instead of go to the dining room.
Right.
You can choose to sit in your apartment instead of participate in some of the activities. I mean, it really is up to you, to some extent.
Good point.
Well, we're getting clearly into sort of the next phase, aren't we?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about, the sort of how you integrate yourself, and that can take time for sure. And then the idea of how you get fully engaged in the community, and that is definitely something that people do differently based on their personalities, based on what their interests are. But I feel like there's definitely the opportunity to do that. I don't know whether people feel pressure or not. I think that did come up a little bit, that there was like a sense that there was an expectation that you're supposed to get out and do all these things. I know I see people in the hallways, like rushing from one activity to another and sort of saying, well, this is retirement, and I don't know whether that's what people want to do or what people feel like they are expected to do at some level.
Well, that's a good question.
I think we can get overcommitted pretty easily because there are so many things that you can do here.
Yeah.
And you maybe have time to think about things that you never had time before. If you had a work life, you were busy working and commuting and trying to keep up a house or something at the same time. And now, you have time to do these things and try different things that you maybe hadn't tried before. It's awfully easy to say, oh yes, well I think I could do that, and then you say it to another person, and then next thing you know, every day that week you've got something going on, and those single days where you have nothing become very precious.
Right. So how does that feel? Do you feel at that point like, whoa, I don't want to be doing this, or oh, this is good, I feel so alive?
Sometimes if I've got the balance right, everything's good. If I've got too much, then I have to pull back.
Okay.
And I think you try different things when you come in. Just because you attend a meeting of something doesn't mean you've committed yourself to running the group. You can just simply go and listen and find out.
So you're exploring.
You're exploring, and I think that's a very important thing for new people to do.
Oh,
is explore.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about reinventing ourselves.
Right.
That was a phrase that we heard frequently, didn't we? Yeah, and that's really what I think you're describing here is you're exploring possibilities. Who do you want to become? Our first program topic was, who am I now that I'm old? And I think this is exactly right. This is a marvelous place to reinvent yourself.
I think it's great that we have the time to do it, and so many options here. If there's anything you can think of, you can probably find a group to do it with.
Or if you can't, then you
can create
your own
That's
group.
exactly
right. Sandy, are you doing different things than you did when you arrived?
Yes. Some things I still do with my friends from outside.
Now you're still in a book group.
In a book group, that I've been in for 37 years, something like that.
Wow.
I've joined your memoir writing group, which is something I didn't do before. And
Sandy is an excellent writer.
oh, thanks. I started doing Barbara Preston's watercolor group. I had never picked up a paintbrush in my life for that kind of painting.
How are you finding that?
I'm loving it. Are
you in the pottery group?
No, I'm not in the pottery group. And I'm exploring some drawing classes that are available. So, I had to give up quilting because space becomes an issue,
Well, your quilts are absolutely magnificent, and they're quite large.
Yeah, some of them are, and space is an issue for that. So I'm substituting other creative outlets, and there are plenty of them here. So, that's a good thing.
Carolyn, how about you? Are you doing very different things now? You're going to be taking over the Villager
In January.
But now you were a writer.
I was doing medical writing, and so since I've been here, I'd never been terribly involved civically in civic groups and so on, and I found myself ending up on committees, and then I ended up on the council.
Yes.
And so I served on the council for a few years, and that was something I'd never done before. And the Villager is definitely going to be something I've never done before, because my previous writing was not, it's going to have some creative, and my previous work wasn't as creative. It was more making sure all the little bits and pieces were in the right place, and that I understood
Yes, that's going to be a huge job.
Yes.
I'm just listening to you guys, and I'm hearing that was something I've never done before so many times, and I think it's just such a testimony to what people are doing here, because honestly, I think naturally people try to recreate what they have done before, so I don't know what it is about this place that gets people past that, but it's working clearly.
Well, I tried some other groups, and it's not that I'm not interested in those things anymore, but you realize that you have, if you take on a certain other commitment, that you won't have time for everything else.
Yeah, yeah. But
And are you
everybody-
finding it fun to do brand new things?
Challenging,
Yeah.
but it's good for us.
Right, right.
Yes.
I think it must be reinforcing at some level. You try one thing and you go, oh, this is like pretty good. I'm enjoying it. And then you'll try something different.
Oh, yeah.
So it gets you out of your rut a
I
little
started
bit.
doing Sudokus. I certainly never
I
did
would.
those
I will
before.
say I'll never do those. So check in a couple more years.
No, those would be a challenge for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the opportunity, the time, as you're pointing out, we, for the first time in years, have actual time to explore things. Gosh, time was always such a pressure that we couldn't. And I think also with responsible jobs, which all of us have had, you just didn't have the mental and physical energy to be exploring a lot of new things.
Well, and I think here things are so convenient. I mean,
Yeah, they are.
you know, I live in Connor Terrace. The memories class is in Village Square. The watercolor class is in Village Square. You know, something else is in Hunter's Crossing, which isn't that far. I mean, it's so handy, and so it's easy. It's very easy to do it, and that's great. That makes it easy.
And you're taking advantage. I
Yes.
see it's almost time for us to end.
There is.
It
And
went so fast.
I think, Kathleen, we were not entirely sure how far we would get in our list today.
Yeah, with the idea of what the life experiences are as people, come to Green Spring and get settled in, and I think we did a pretty good job of painting a picture of what that looks like. So
Yes, I think these early stages. What I'm thinking too is that probably we will need another program to go through, and we have several more
talk
stages
about
here.
what it's like when you've been here for 14 years. Or
Exactly,
19
and
years.
aging in place, and exactly right.
Yeah.
So this was terrific.
Thanks so much for taking
Thank you.
part, for sure. Okay, now I have to do my favorite part.